Right, unbagging and unboxing. And we have, top of the box, a quick guide for 4K photos and a very small manual. And then we have the camera. The strap. The lens hood. Super duper. Look at that. .67mm lens cap. Well, it would be. Otherwise it wouldn't fit. And a little cord to tie it on with. I hate them because the last thing I want is that damn thing dangling where I don't know where it is. The battery charger. Lumix, of course. USB to micro USB B. A battery and the mains lead for the charger. And that's the box empty. But this is the main thing, the main event of the day. It's a big camera. It's as big as my D6 and D7. It's a big, heavy camera. If you have a look on the back, even this viewing screen is thicker, and it is touch. It turns right over, the usual carry on, and it turns over so you can see it there as well. You've got all the usual controls. That's for the diopters on the viewfinder. You've got two controls on your lens, and you can tell them what you want it to be. There's another control up here, wide in television, wide in tele. If you're on a tripod, you can get to the battery. How about that? Unusual. And more to the point, you can get to the card slot. I will do a review on it and all the controls and the side screens there, and you've got a microphone, earphones, whole load of gubbins here. There you are. But that's just the unboxing. I'll do a review later. This is the built-in speaker on the Fz2000, and that's a Sony G20. That's a Zoom H2N, and that's another Sony G20. Now you'll notice the front of that G20 is different from the front of that G20. This G20 has a magnetic front on it, and it takes mag light filters. This one has a screw on, which I added myself, which takes, well, I can get 58mm filters on because I step up to 58. And the zoom, it's just a zoom. But you can never say a zoom is just a zoom. They are excellent. Hello, and this is the video. It's not tuition, it's just telling you about the Lumix, the new Lumix Fz2000, or in America it's the Fz2000. We in the UK it's Fz2000, and it's just mainly my likes and dislikes. Yeah, I know I've got a filter on, but I always have filters on, so right. I love the internal focusing. Just switch it on a minute. There. That's it. No matter what you do now, it doesn't go any further, it doesn't get any longer. It's versatile physical controls, 4K, Full HD video capture, way beyond its competitors. 12 frame per second burst mode, or 30 frame per second at 8 megapixels in the 4K mode. Large OLED viewfinder and vari-angle LCD. It measures 102 by 135 by 138. Shut it down. Millimeter, and it weighs in at 966 gram. Has dual lens there and there, ring controls, and full manual or automatic controls. I'm a manual person, so I use the manual settings. The things I've got against it: the autofocus can be a little bit slower compared to, say, Panasonic's G series compact system. Yeah, undeniably big and pricey. You reach the f4.5 on this by the 250mm equivalent. When I first saw this, the Fz2000, back in September 2016, I thought it spelled the end of the camcorder as we know it. For this premium super zoom camera so packed out with 4K video features that on paper it wraps up all the wide to telly, zoom goodness and technical goodies you could want in one body. I love the Fz2000, its predecessor to this, when it was brought out to the market in 2014. But the Lumix Fz2000 is a whole different beast with a whole new design, internal focusing lenses and advances in performance. It's just completely different. And with the 1-inch sensor, premium super zoom camera is this if you want to plump for one. I'm just going to show it to the camera there when I zoom, and you might see what's moving inside. Of course, on the other hand, you might not. Let me just turn this viewing screen around so I can see what it sees, and I'll show it to that one. You might just see it zooming out. That was 1920mm from 24, because I've got one of the modes activated that gives you a lot more zoom. But I'll tell you about that as we go along. You're talking about £1,100, so it's a DSLR sized Lumix. And I love it after a week in tow with it. Please note that in much of my footage there's always a filter on the lens, either a variable MD or a clear Hoya UV. They protect the glass and they do have other uses. I do love the 24 to 480 lens on it. It's f2.8 to f4.5 equivalent zoom lens. That's 20x by 20, or much more in the extended mode, which I'll explain later. The lens is internal focusing, which means the lens doesn't move once it's in position. Both cameras have seen that. Often updated cameras will tweak the sensor or add a new feature here and there, but the FZ2000 is a total rework over the FZ1000. The new lens, for example, provides a 20 times optical zoom ranging from a wide angle of 24 through to 480 equivalent. That's a notable amount of extra zoom over the FZ1000's 400mm, ensuring that the FZ2000 keeps the super zoom. Using digital zoom as well, and it is very good. The M, S and the P programs give you 24mm to 1920mm. Yep, 1920mm. 1A on here, IA, gives 24 to 96mm. And on the movie mode, you get 25mm to 2000mm. Oh, I mean, what more do you want? And you can hold it because it doesn't stick out here. Oh dear. Plus it can focus just 3 centimeters from the lens front glass at its widest angle, which is a bit impressive. But crucially, the FZ2000 lens has internal focus, and you know that because I keep telling you. So once the camera is switched on and the lens is extended into position, it doesn't physically move again, no matter how much you adjust the zoom toggle. So 24mm sees the lens remain at the same physical length as it does 480 or 2000. A new feature for many Panasonic cameras is the new 5-axis image stabilization system, which covers for pitch, yaw and roll. So 24mm sees the lens remains at the same physical length, but this yaw and roll, it just benefits everything in the system. Whether you're at 24, which, let's face it, you should be able to handhold any very easily. But it takes advantage of this system too, with that 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor strapped into the cockpit to make the most of it, excluded during 4K capture. It works well, especially for extra support at those longer focal lengths that I was talking about when the aperture is limited by default. The lens is, however, limited to f4.5 by the time you reach, say, 250mm and the equivalent zoom. Never been a problem for me. That lens makes a little noise when zooming. It might be a nuisance for video capture, but having tried the FZ1000s side by side, it's not louder per se, just tonally different in its motor sounds. But I've got to say, who uses the built-in microphones anyway? I would think anyone who paid over £1,000, for a camera would use it either Zoom recorders, Zoom H2n, H4, 5n6, or external microphones. I use both of these, so never worry about what the camera is picking up anyway. This comes with earphone jack, it comes with 3.5 mic jack, so you can hear what the camera hears anyway. A long focal length is one thing, but there's not a great deal of aperture control, then it limits its practicality. There's a couple of interesting elements about the FZ2000 lens. First, it's f2.8 to f4.5 aperture. Tends to mean that ample light can enter the camera. It's not quite as special as the FZ200, the constant f2.8 one, but that camera has a smaller sensor, plus with 9 aperture blades in here and an actuator for the control, it means more rounded bokeh and no stepping for iris control during video capture. Swings and roundabouts. However, the camera does rapidly arrive at f4 by the time you've extended it to 80mm equivalent, then down to f4.5 by the 250 equivalent. So that 2.8 maximum does fall off rather quickly beyond its 24mm wide angle position. To compensate, you'll more than likely just have to up the ISO sensitivity. because of its fairly large sensor size and paired lens, the FZ2000 is a pretty big camera. I'm talking DSLR size really, so perhaps not your casual carry around. At almost 1 kilogram in weight, it might sound heavy, but we found it really well balanced in the hand once switched on with the lens protruding. A Pro DSLR weighs a lot more. A heck of a lot more, especially if you've got a lens on that does what this length has, it'd be out here. Oh dear. All this doesn't affect the FZ2000's enthusiastic target audience, though, and it is an unavoidable condition in order to get the necessary coverage of such a sensor. In terms of handling, the large grip on the right is comfortable, while the two twin lens rings there and there can be used to push through the zoom range and manually focus if you want. The zoom toggle around the shutter is also used to action the zoom, which actually sees the top thumb wheel there. It actually sees that top thumb wheel used for, say, aperture control to be positioned, and it's perfect in my view. It's easily in reach and it does feel naturally placed. Right, the screen and the viewfinder. Just switch off again. Yeah. It has a 3-inch screen with 1,040,000 dot resolution on the screen. That's pretty cool. A vari-angle LCD bracket mount with an amazing touch screen. It really is. Look, that's your focusing. And you can just do everything from the touch screen if you want. The OLED viewfinder has 2,360,000 dot resolution. It also has a 0.74 finder magnification equivalent. I love it. Right, the viewfinder. I told you it's 0.74 equivalent mag. Means it's huge to the eye, the kind of level top-end interchangeable lens cameras offer, while its OLED panel and 2,360,000 dot resolution ensures the best quality. In low light, the finder does exhibit some lag, which can make panning stutter a little. It's just a bit harder to stomach, but fairly normal. There's no faster refresh rate option for this panel, whereas the real screen offers 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second to help you. The LCD screen might be a more standard offering for cameras these days. It's TFT LCD. Not saying that because it's a touch screen. I've very often ended up misplacing the focal point when putting the screen back into its standard position, which is annoying, but I'd still sooner have the touch screen than not. Right, its performance. Well, it's got 49 area autofocus. Yeah, I'll tell you now, I don't use auto anything. I'm strictly a manual guy, but I've tried it. You've got to give these things a go. It's pretty good. I must be. It's very fast. It's faster than I can do it manually, but I just prefer to go manual. So the burst rate's 12 frames per second in single AF and 7 frames per second in continuous AF. 4K photos. Right. The book says you get 8 megapixel stills at 30 frames per second. 8 megapixel. That's every frame of video. 8 megapixel you can take a print from. Right, but taken direct from my own videos, I put a couple of test videos on YouTube just to compare them and have a look at it myself. I get over 9 megapixels. So go figure. I don't know. I mean, we're talking nearly 9.5. And that's big enough for an A3 print. So I'm not really worried. I don't print A3, so it doesn't matter. The press to focus on the screen, you make adjustments via the camera's rear controls. You select between a huge array of focus types, including pinpoint, crosshair type, one area adjustment, toggle, the dedicated single, continuous manual focus switch. It's all there at your fingertips. Perhaps the most noticeable of all these is the autofocus. With any arrangements as pulled directly, we'll compare it with the Lumix GH4, which is Panasonic's current top-end interchangeable lens camera, until the G5 comes out in 2017, well, this year. And other Lumix G series cameras, the specification of this premium super zoom reads well. It generally works very well too. The autofocus modes, right, you got face detection, tracking, 49 area auto, custom multi, one area, pinpoint. They're all accurate and snappy, and it's a very good autofocus system. But as I said, being old school, I use manual in all settings, and it's probably one of the very best cameras I have ever owned, and I've had hundreds. Hasselblads, Mimeas, Bronicas, that's the old-fashioned ones, nothing to do with digital. But even in the movie mode, it offers better control than my Canon HF camcorders. That'll tell you all you need to know. And it's make or break time. It's that superb 4K in both photo images and movies that does it. So I'm selling them all. I'm going to buy another one of these. Right, burst mode can work through 12 frames a second, as I told you, in single autofocus, dipping to 7. It can be faster still if you flick into what Panasonic calls its 4K photo mode. This option uses video capture for 8 megapixel images. I get over 9 captured at 30 frames per second. It can also be used to shoot a second of footage before and after pressing the shutter button to avoid missing the moment, or for merging a stack of photos after shooting to combine the focus depth. You can tell it which parts you want to be in focus, the whole lot if you want. Right, the image quality. It has the 20 megapixel 1-inch MOS sensor, an ISO sensitivity of 125, this is standard, 125 to 12,800. And if you want to go into extended mode, and I did, it still is, it goes from 80 to 25,600. I'm just going to show you this lens while I think about it. Look there. Look, right up to 1920. Look, it keeps going until it gets to 1920. I'm not showing you the ISO. I could do, I suppose. Hang on. Right, there's your ISO. You can see it at the bottom there. I'm using the back wheel, by the way. Right, you can see 25 right up there. 25,600. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. 80. What can't speak? Can't lie. Yeah, quite impressed with that. Right. There are quite a few settings for JPEG and RAW capture options. One of the real reasons to consider buying this camera is its larger than average sensor size. The 1-inch scale is the same as found in its Sony RX10 III competitor, but it's not identical. A sensor of this size gives immediate benefit to maximum depth of field. The blurry background effect is amplified further thanks to the longer focal length achievable from this camera. Something that wouldn't be pronounced from a smaller sensor model. It's not possible. Just as I found with the Sony RX10, the Panasonic Fz2000 delivers an even stronger set of results than I had anticipated. Having worked with it continuously during this review period, I've been so impressed with everything it does. Really, I have. Oh dear. Good colour balance, exposure, detail, depth of field. I mean, they all attribute to decent image quality, and the close-up macro mode has been particularly useful. The inherent quality of the images is largely free from interfering image noise too. The lowest ISO standard setting is 125, and as you've seen, it can be lowered to 80 to 100, but at these settings the dynamic range is slightly less. Images shot at the base level, ISO 125, and where I've been playing with it, I've showed that the results are slightly richer with loads of detail. So You pays your money and you takes your choice. Further up the ISO scale, take an ISO 6400 shot of a fireplace with lots of dark and shade area, and there's some more significant colour noise and a blanket of visible grain. It's not disruptive, though, despite the camera's process and softening the overall appearance compared to the lower ISO settings. In short, this camera is a big step beyond the smaller sensor equivalent, and there's still some JPEG processing artifacts that are a little harsh when it comes to the finer detail areas. This becomes more prominent as the ISO sensitivity rises, which does on all cameras, which maxes out at 12,800 or 25,600 extended should you need it. And sometimes, given that 4.5 aperture, at those longer focal lengths, it can see the FZ2000 shot default to higher sensitivities. Myself, I use a tripod, lower ISO or gain, and seldom gun and run. I can't run at my age anyway. Overall, and despite the more limited maximum aperture than say the FZ200, the FZ2000 is a camera on par with the Sony RX10 III. So if image quality is your primary concern, then the main difference between the two cameras will come down to features. The Sony has the longer zoom and wider aperture, but isn't as feature heavy, and it lacks the same degree of video ability by a long way. Now this is the interesting bit for videographers out there. 4K capture. 4K capture at 30, 25 and 24p. Full HD capture at 120, 60 and 50. Neutral density filter controls on the side. Look, looky. I use a neutral density filter on the front, but please yourself. 4K photos, 8 megapixel stills at 30 frames per second. To this point, we've roughly been focusing on this as a stills camera, but as we mentioned in the intro, it's also heavily video focused with all kinds of moving image skill. I've already mentioned the internal focusing and the smooth iris control, but there's a stack of additional controls that will appeal to the videographers. To the side of the lens, for example, there and there, FN1 and FN2, and there's an FN3, are slow zoom in and zoom out buttons, F1 and F2 respectively, for more precise control without wobbly hands being a nuisance. To make the most of the wide aperture, there's built-in neutral density filters, as I've explained, controlled via the switch on this side, and it offers 1/64th, 1/16th and 1/4 step downs as marked. But there's no way to view this information on the screen or in the finder, so you might forget a section is active. Still, it's a nifty feature, and I don't need it because I keep a variable neutral density filter on my lens anyway when I'm shooting video, and I can see what I'm getting, and I can see what the camera's saying I'm going to get, so I don't have to worry about guessing. And I'll stick to my own tried and tested way, dialing in what I wish on my ND filter. I do the same with my stills. I've already mentioned the audible motor when zooming and how this can be bypassed by using an external microphone or one of the zoom recorders, which the camera offers, with the camera offering via a 3.5mm jack, in addition to an extra 3.5mm headphone monitoring jack. Mini HDMI out can also be used for an Atomos device to monitor externally, including start, stop and recording controls, or if you want 4K 422 10-bit color output, then the HDMI out can be used to capture via an external recorder. It's 422 8-bit onto the SD card, of which there's only one slot in this camera. I'll show you there. You will notice I have a U3 Class 10 128GB card. And if you're going to use this camera to its full capability, you want at least one of them, and I've got a couple of 3. Leaving barely any stone unturned, there's also zebra stripes, time codes, synchro scan, luminous level, color bar controls for the high-end videographers amongst you. And if you want vlog output, it's available for an extra £79. I don't need it. And if you're totally lost about what the hell those last two sentences mean, vlog, then rest assured this camera has all the video ability you need and then some. And that's the truth. As super zoom cameras go, it's without compare when it comes to video capture. I do not require vlog for the videos I make. In addition to 4K capture at 30, 25 and 24p, Full HD recording is available up to 120 as I've said, and a special slow-mo option. It needs to be activated separately within the menus, which can be a bit sloppy, but it's easy with this screen. My summing up my personal verdict. The Fz2000 is a big and pricey super zoom, but its premium position is justified for the right kind of user, and with its significant push towards video features, that will be for both photographers and videographers alike. The premium super zoom market doesn't have a huge number of models fighting it out for the number one spot, with only Sony's RX10 III giving this Panasonic a run for its money with its slightly longer zoom and wider aperture. However, the Sony is pricier and we prefer Panasonic's internally focusing lens position. Now I said we because I've let 2 or 3 of my friends have a play with it and they've gone out and bought them. When a normal super zoom won't cut it, the Fz2000's enhanced image quality from its 1-inch sensor is what really stands out. It's a noticeable jump over the previous Fz1000, while its decent battery life and autofocus performance have actually seen it replace my go-to mirrorless camera for the time I've been using it. When a normal super zoom won't cut it, the Fz2000's enhanced image quality from its 1-inch sensor is what really stands out. It's a noticeable jump over the previous Fz1000, while its decent battery life and autofocus performance have actually seen it replace my go-to mirrorless camera for the time I've been using it. And I say my friends who've borrowed it have been out playing and they've gone straight out and bought one. One of them chopped all his gear in and bought one. So if you've been looking for a do-it-all body and you're not fearful of the DSLR scale, then as a stills camera there's plenty on offer in here. If video is more your thing, then I think this camera has considerable capabilities. Paint a red cross on the door of the enthusiast camcorder market. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I shall be running different programs showing how it all works bit by bit as time goes on. Thank you. Bye.